My name is Clarissa, 38 years old, living in Denver, and I used to think I was the loving backbone of my family. For 10 straight years, I sent $3,500 each month, covering everything from my mom's heart medication to my sister's architecture tuition. But in just one Tuesday afternoon, when my sister accidentally sent a voice file meant for a secret family group chat, my world collapsed. In it, my mother laughed loudly and said, "If she dies, I think I'd be more upset about losing the money than losing a daughter." Have you ever realized that, to your own family, you were nothing more than a walking wallet? Have you ever been crushed by the cold words of those you loved most? If you've ever been hurt by the very people you once protected, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, because what happened next was even more brutal than that recording. I sat frozen in front of my computer screen, the Zoom meeting still running in the corner, but I couldn't hear anything besides the steady pounding in my chest. The words from that recording echoed in my mind over and over. If she dies, I think I'd be more upset about losing the money than losing a daughter. My mother's voice. Without hesitation. I thought back to the years I'd lived. No, survived. I started sending money when my mom said she had severe osteoporosis and couldn't work anymore. At the time, I had just been promoted to operations manager at a logistics company, not earning a huge salary but enough to believe I could manage. My father had already quit working years before, saying his factory job had worn him out. They lived in an old single-story house in Aurora. I used to love that house, the place I grew up, where every morning I could hear the school bus outside and smell toast from the tiny kitchen. When my mom said they were about to lose it because they couldn't keep up with the mortgage, I didn't think twice. I took out an extra loan and wired $80,000 to save it. A week later, they sent me a photo, smiling brightly under the peach tree by the porch, thanking me for keeping the family home. I printed that photo and taped it next to my desk. I thought I was doing the right thing. Then came the call. My mother told me her doctor had found early signs of breast cancer. She said it gently, like she didn't want me to worry. "No need to make a fuss, Clarissa. I'll fight it." I sent $15,000 within a week. Then another $10,000 after the second call. She said she needed special tests not covered by insurance. I worked overtime, canceled my planned vacation to Seattle, the one I'd been saving up for all year. No one else knew. I didn't tell a soul, not even Caleb, my boyfriend at the time, who had proposed to me with a silver ring one rainy June afternoon. I didn't answer right away. I looked at him, at the ring, and then thought of my bank balance, the medical bills, the house in Aurora. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I told him, "Not right now." I never told him the real reason. Caleb thought I didn't love him enough. But the truth was, I was too exhausted to start a new family while still carrying the weight of the old one on my back. And then there was Harper, my younger sister. She was 13 when I left for college. She used to sit in my lap and ask me to draw princess hair on her dolls, used to call me Fairy Sister Clarissa. I promised her I'd make sure she got to college so she wouldn't struggle like our parents did. And I kept that promise. When Harper got into an architecture program in Minneapolis, my parents called me in tears, saying they couldn't afford her first semester. I immediately wired $20,000. Then every semester after that, it was the same. Rent, textbooks, living expenses. I took on side projects, worked weekends. Once I fell asleep on my desk and woke up with keyboard imprints on my cheek. She never asked if I was okay. But I didn't blame her. She was young. I thought helping was enough. Every month, I sent $3,500 into my parents' joint account. I called it peace of mind money. Each month, my mom would text a quick thank you, sometimes with a photo of my dad reading a book or Harper eating dinner at home. Those photos were the only reward I got in return. I never questioned it. Never verified anything. I didn't know those photos were taken in a brand new vacation cabin in Idaho registered under Harper's name. I didn't know the old car my dad said needed $2,000 in repairs was actually a new SUV I spotted in the background of their Thanksgiving photo. They said it belonged to a neighbor. I believed them. Because they were my family. And I loved them. So I didn't hesitate when they said the furnace broke during a snowstorm and asked for $5,000. I sat in my apartment wearing a thin sweater, using an electric heater, hands shaking from the cold, but my heart warmed thinking my parents weren't freezing anymore. I didn't buy the chair I loved for my living room. I kept using the old one. I didn't buy a dishwasher. I washed everything by hand. I told myself, as long as they're okay, that's enough. Now here I am, gripping the edge of my desk, staring at the screen that reads, Clarissa's Zoom meeting, live. Those people, my mother, my father, Harper, laughing together in that recording, talking about me like I was a paycheck, not a daughter, not a sister, not a human being. I played the audio again just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. And when my mother laughed and said she actually believed I had cancer, I felt my whole body turn cold, like someone had poured ice over my chest. I loved my family the wrong way. I thought helping meant doing the right thing, fulfilling my duty, showing love. But for the past 10 years I hadn't been living. I'd only been existing for them. And now I wasn't even sure they ever truly needed me, or if they just needed my money. I scrolled down, hands trembling as if my body couldn't handle what my eyes were reading. A message from Harper, my sister who once hugged me on every birthday and whispered, "You're my favorite person," now wrote something that made the entire room feel like it dropped 10 degrees. She's so stupid, I honestly thought she was programmed to be a walking credit card. I read that line 3 times. Each time it cut deeper. This wasn't a joke. This was how my sister saw me all along. A tool. A bank account. Something without a heart, without feelings. I played the Zoom recording again. My mother's voice, clear and smug. I made up the cancer story and she believed it right away. No doctor, no paperwork. Just said special tests, and she reached for her wallet. My dad's voice chimed in with laughter in the background. That girl was born to support this family. If she died tomorrow, I'd be more upset about losing the cash than the kid. I bit my lip hard, holding back a scream. I thought of the silver Toyota Corolla I sold 3 years ago to scrape together enough for Mom's emergency treatment. That freezing autumn night she called close to midnight, her voice weak. "Clarissa, I need to go to the ER. My heartbeat's irregular and insurance won't cover it. I don't know what to do." I remember leaping out of bed, rushing to my computer, logging into my bank account. I had barely $3,000. I called the bank, begged for a credit limit increase. Not enough. The next morning, I took my car to a dealership and sold it immediately. They gave me less than it was worth. I knew that. But I had no choice. I took an Uber home, forcing a smile when the driver asked, "Car trouble?" There were no medical reports. No bills. No documents sent after. I never got a thank you. But I never asked. I told myself, as long as they're okay, that's enough. Now I sit here, staring at undeniable proof that it was all a lie. Mom never went to the ER. She didn't have heart problems. No cancer. It was all an elaborate story, just convincing enough to keep me from questioning. And Harper, she was there for all of it, helping them sell the illusion. I opened the old photo album on my phone. There was one of Harper standing in the middle of the school courtyard on her graduation day, beaming with pride, holding high the bouquet I had sent. I remembered being on a night shift at the plant back then, unable to fly out for the ceremony. I had sent a video message to congratulate her, eyes teary with guilt for not being there. I still remembered her reply, "You're the most amazing person I've ever known." But now, in the chat with Mom, Harper wrote, "If she knew where all that money was going, she'd probably yank Mom's oxygen tube right out. Good thing she never asks." Mom responded, "Who would have thought she'd be that gullible? One call and the money flows like water. Easier than working." I didn't know what hurt more, the blatant lies or the fact that I had once believed this was love. Quietly, I stood up and opened the bottom drawer of my desk, taking out a small box where I kept my most precious mementos. A birthday card handwritten by Harper when she was 16, a congratulatory note from Mom when I got my first promotion, and a handkerchief Mom had embroidered with my name when I was a child. I gently touched each item as if searching for something real in a sea of deceit. But all I felt was fabric paper, not the memories that had now been shattered. My phone buzzed. A message from Harper. "I'm sorry, please don't be mad. It was all just a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? I couldn't begin to understand what kind of misunderstanding involved faking illness to siphon money from your own daughter. Or what kind of family bond laughed at the sacrifices of someone who had given up everything for them as if it were all a joke. I stared at the message, my hand tightening. Then I did something I hadn't dared to do in over 10 years. I didn't reply. I left the phone on the table, screen lighting up then fading away. I walked to the window and looked out at the glowing lights of Denver. I didn't wonder, are they okay? All I could think was, How many things have I not known all these years? I stayed up that night, not because of work, not for a meeting, but driven by a fierce need to know the whole truth. No more shadows. No more blind trust. I turned on the living room lights and laid out every bank statement I had on the table. Then I opened my laptop, logged into my online banking, and pulled up files from my personal drive. Every transfer had a label, a recipient, a reason, and I had never questioned a single one. $3,500 every month. For 10 years. Not including the emergencies, medical bills, tuition, house repairs, cars, birthdays, Christmas, even funeral costs for Uncle George, who I later found out was still alive and driving a cab in Nevada. I sat there logging each transaction into a spreadsheet. By 3 a.m, the final total popped up. $419,650. I froze. My fingers stiff on the mouse, unable to click another cell. Every dollar represented a part of my life that I had given up. A time I denied myself so I could fund someone else's dream. A night of instant noodles instead of dinner out. A year without travel. A lifetime of limitations. I took a deep breath. But what nearly brought me to tears wasn't the number. It was when I stumbled upon a credit report with Harper's name in the financial analysis system I had access to through work. Because I had co-signed her student loan during her early college years, the system still listed me as a connected party. And right there, in the middle of the recent expenditures, a name popped up. Timber Valley Cabin Property Management, Idaho. I clicked to see the details. A lakeside vacation cabin with 3 bedrooms, a fireplace, a barbecue patio, and a snow-covered porch in winter, according to the listing. Purchased 2 years ago. Owner listed as Harper M. Hawkins. I nearly jumped out of my seat. That was the same period when Mom said she needed money for post-surgery hormone therapy because the tumor wasn't responding to medication. I had wired $5,000, then $8,000, then another $15,000. Meanwhile, they were buying a vacation cabin. I kept digging. A photo of the cabin appeared on a weekend rental website. I recognized it instantly. The red-brown wooden door, the stone wall, the white hammock strung between 2 pine trees. Exactly like the picture from Harper's Girls' Getaway last winter. When I asked, she told me her boyfriend had rented it as a surprise for their anniversary. I bit my lip and clicked further. The cabin was registered as a shared family investment. I dug through my old emails. A PDF from Mom popped up, a family investment plan she had sent me nearly 2 years ago. I'd skimmed it and transferred the money without question. The document included a note. We want to make a small investment in a long-term income asset for retirement. It's easier to list under Harper's name for short-term rental purposes. I believed it at the time. I thought even if it wasn't for me, at least it was for them. Retirement, rest, future. It all made sense. I didn't think that cabin would be a secret hideaway while I sat in my office at 8 p.m. eating prepackaged salad. I scrolled through Harper's social media. Most of the old photos were gone, but I found one post she was tagged in by a friend. In it, Harper stood outside the cabin with 2 girlfriends holding a glass of wine and laughing. The caption read, "Our winter escape. Thanks Harper for sharing this little paradise." I didn't feel anger anymore. Just a hollow ache inside me. I had once thought that cabin was a small reward they gave themselves after years of hardship. But it wasn't paid for with their labor. It was bought with money I chose not to spend on my own life. With the first home I never bought. With the car I silently sold. With the evenings I sat alone in the office while everyone else was out taking engagement photos. I kept sitting there, flipping through each receipt, each photo, each figure, as if I were decoding my own life. And the more I looked, the clearer it became. I wasn't a daughter. I was a fund. I hadn't lived in a family. I had lived inside a system of exploitation disguised as kinship. The clock showed 4:20 a.m. when I shut off the screen. I stepped out onto the porch and looked up at the Denver sky. The streetlights cast pools of gold on the sidewalk. I closed my eyes. In the silence I realized, the cold outside felt kinder than the one I had just walked away from. I sent all 3 of them a meeting request for Wednesday morning. Just one sentence. This Sunday 6 p.m. at my place. We need to talk finances. No more, no less. They all confirmed. No one asked for details. Maybe because they assumed I would offer another rescue plan, just like always. I spent the weekend preparing. I printed all the bank statements from the last 10 years. Highlighted every transfer. Printed out every message, every audio file, every photo of the Idaho cabin listing Harper as the owner. I worked like I was preparing for a lawsuit, though I wouldn't need a courtroom. I needed to look them in the eye when I laid it all bare. My living room was rearranged. A round table in the center with 4 chairs. I placed the documents in a black folder, sorted neatly by section. 1 for me, 3 for them, and a 4th set for the 5th person joining this meeting. Diane Meyer, financial attorney, and the most trusted friend I had since the internal company investigation 3 years ago. I hadn't told anyone Diane would be there. Sunday afternoon, Harper arrived first. Still the same radiant look, perfectly made up, wearing the cream-colored long coat and high heels I had once given her for graduation. She walked in as if attending a tea party. New candle scent? Fancy, she smiled, eyes scanning the room, completely ignoring the thick folders already placed on the table. My parents arrived shortly after. My mother wore the cashmere sweater I had sent from New York, the custom-ordered expensive kind. Dad looked slightly hunched, but his demeanor hadn't changed. He walked in and sat down as though waiting to be served coffee. "What's this about, dear?" my mother asked, her voice sweet but cold. I sat down and opened the folder in front of me. The room fell silent. "I've compiled every cent I've sent to the family over the past 10 years, I said slowly. Including emergencies, insurance, tuition, medical costs. The total comes to $419,650. I slid the folders toward them. 1 copy for each. Harper glanced down, frowning. "Why would you even do all this?" I didn't respond immediately. I quietly opened my laptop and played a Zoom recording Harper had accidentally sent. My mother's voice rang clearly through the room. "If she dies, I'll be more upset about losing the monthly support than losing a daughter." Dad cleared his throat. Harper's eyes widened, her face pale. I hit pause. "That's just one of many recordings," I said, still calm. "And here's proof of the vacation cabin in Idaho under Harper's name." I pulled out the purchase documents, photos of the property, registration papers, and income statements from the online rental listing. My mother finally spoke up, trying to regain composure. "Carissa, you're misunderstanding everything. That was just joking among family. The cabin, it's a small investment. We were planning to surprise you on your 40th birthday." Harper nodded quickly. "Yeah, you're always making things a big deal." I looked up at them. "And what about the times you claimed you were sick and needed money for treatment, but never produced a single receipt? Or when Dad said the house needed repairs after a flood, even though I checked and there hadn't been any rain that month? Or when Harper said she had to retake a class but was in Miami during finals week?" No one said a word. I stood and walked to the bedroom door. I opened it and Diane stepped out wearing a gray blazer and holding a legal folder. She nodded politely. "This is my financial attorney. She's here to formally inform you that I've initiated the process to recover all assets tied to me under the guise of family support but used fraudulently. That includes the Idaho cabin, undocumented wire transfers, and illegally shared property." My mother stood up, shocked. "You brought a lawyer into this? You're going to sue your own family?" "I'm not suing," I replied. "I'm protecting what's mine." My father clenched his jaw. "I'm the one who gave you life. You owe me your whole existence." I looked at him steady. "And I've paid that debt with 10 years of mine. From today on, I owe you nothing." Harper whispered, "You'd blow everything up over a couple jokes?" I turned to her. "If you think an entire system of deceit, exploitation, and contempt is a joke, maybe you never saw me as family at all." Diane began reading aloud. "Request to liquidate the cabin, freeze shared accounts, revoke inheritance rights." My parents sat frozen. "You can't do this without our consent," my mother shouted. "I can. Because every dollar used for those purchases came from my personal account. I have all the statements, receipts, and confirmations. And if necessary, I'm prepared to go to court." I had never seen them so silent. No excuses left. No explanations. Diane packed up the documents, nodded to me, and left. I stood up without saying another word. The house fell into a heavy silence, like dust settling over a shattered memory. They remained seated. But to me, the shadow of family I once clung to was gone. I spent all of Monday doing what I should have done years ago. First was canceling all automated transfers to the account under my parents' names. When the bank asked for a reason, I simply said, "The recipients are no longer qualified." The rep confirmed the cancellation, his tone flat and neutral. But to me, each word felt like scissors cutting the invisible cord I had tied around my own neck. Next was the health insurance. For 2 years, I had added my parents and Harper to the premium plan reserved for executives. I gave up nearly a third of my income monthly to ensure they had access to the best hospitals. I called the insurance company. The woman on the other end, Leona, had a gentle but firm voice. "You want to remove all dependents, correct?" "Yes." "They're no longer my responsibility." "Would you like to provide a specific reason?" I paused for a few seconds. "Reason: termination of financial support due to prolonged abuse and deception." Leona didn't press further. She confirmed the cancellation date and said I'd receive documentation in 3 business days. I thanked her, my voice raw from days without sleep. I moved on to the next task: logging into my life insurance account. For years, I had listed my parents as the primary beneficiaries, even increasing the payout after Harper sent me a photo of Mom falling down the stairs and needing 2 weeks of hospitalization. I opened the profile and clicked Change Beneficiary. My hand trembled slightly as I typed the new name: Jefferson County Children's Outreach Foundation, a nonprofit I'd quietly supported during holidays. I didn't need to think twice. If something ever happened to me, at least the money would go to someone who valued it. When prompted for a reason for the change, I typed a single word: betrayal. Lastly was the Denver apartment. I had agreed to list my parents as co-users when they begged to have some security for retirement. The property deed listed me as the sole owner, but they still had shared usage rights, signed back when I still believed that sharing meant love. Diane helped me file the request to revoke joint usage. Since all financial contributions were mine, the process faced no legal obstacles, provided they signed. They refused. So I began a civil procedure to forcibly revoke access on grounds of unauthorized use. It wasn't easy, but I didn't back down. I no longer chose kindness. That afternoon, as I was organizing some documents in my office, the doorbell rang. I stepped out, looked through the peephole, and wasn't surprised to see Harper standing there. She wasn't wearing a coat. It was drizzling outside, her hair was a mess, cheeks flushed. She rang the bell again. Then again. I opened the door just a crack. "What is it?" Harper said nothing for a few seconds. Her lips were tightly pressed, eyes red. I don't know where to begin," she whispered. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. She began trembling, then suddenly burst into tears. It didn't look fake. She raised her hand to her belly, gripping the hem of her shirt. "I'm pregnant." I didn't blink. I was going to keep it to myself. But now I don't have a choice. The baby's father is gone. I lost my job at the studio. I spent all my savings on the cabin. I have nothing left. She lowered her head. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "I'm not asking for money," Harper said quietly. "I just don't want to be completely cut off. I'm scared. I don't have anyone. I don't know if I can raise this baby on my own." I looked at her like she was a stranger wearing a familiar mask. I tried to feel if there was any trace of pity inside me. Maybe there was. A little. But it was drowned by the echoes of the past. All those times I received tearful texts, followed days later by pictures of her partying with friends. I took a step back. "I hope you and the baby stay safe. But don't call me your sister anymore. I can't keep carrying the weight of other people's choices." "You promised you'd always be there for me," Harper hissed, her eyes burning. "That was back when I still thought we were a family." I gently closed the door. Not harshly, not abruptly, just closed it. The sound of rain soaked the air. Harper's footsteps gradually faded in the hallway. I returned to my desk. On the screen was the new financial plan I had just set up. I was folding it up and getting ready to stand when my phone rang. The screen showed Grand Moth, Florida. I stared at that name for a long time. I'd saved her number ages ago, but I couldn't remember the last time we spoke. Maybe 3 Christmases ago when I called to wish her a happy birthday, and my mom quickly took the phone, saying Grandma was tired and couldn't talk. There were no calls after that. I picked up. "Hello." Grandma Eleanor's voice came through, low and slow but steady, just like I remembered her from my childhood. Clarissa, it's Grandma. I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but I just heard from a friend in Denver. I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. Are you okay? She asked, her voice light like wind rustling through palm trees. I didn't answer right away. For the first time in years, I heard genuine concern, free of expectations or guilt. Just a simple question I hadn't realized I'd longed for so deeply. I'm okay, Grandma, I said, voice quieter than usual. Thank you for calling. There was a pause on the other end, as if she were weighing something, then she spoke again, her voice deeper now. Clarissa, what you've just been through, it's not new in this family. I've seen it before. With your Uncle Nate. 15 years ago. I frowned. Nate? I had vague memories of my second uncle. When I was little, he used to send handwritten birthday cards, sometimes with a $20 bill tucked inside. Then one day he disappeared from all family conversations. My mom said he was useless, a failure, never amounted to anything. Back then, Nate had just sold his shares in a startup, Grandma said. It was a good sum. A lifetime of saving. Then your parents came to him. Tearful, begging for help with a new business. A laundromat. They said Nate had to hold the title because they had bad credit. Nate believed them. Handed over all his capital. She paused, her voice faltering. Not even 3 months later, they transferred ownership to a friend and pushed Nate out of every agreement. He lost everything. Your parents claimed it was a bad investment Nate chose on his own. I sat frozen. Every word slicing through my past like a blade. So where is Uncle Nate now, Grandma? After that, he left Florida. Moved to Canada. Worked in the mines. Sent money home for his kids. Never called again. Every time I mentioned him, your mom would get angry. Eventually, I stopped bringing him up. No one wants to hear old folks talk about the past. I leaned back, heart tangled. So what happened to me wasn't a moment of weakness or a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. A cycle. A rehearsed script. I thought, I must have done something wrong to make them turn like that, I whispered. No, sweetheart, she said firmly yet gently. They don't need someone to make a mistake. They just need someone soft-hearted enough to love without questioning. And you are too good. I don't remember how long I stayed quiet. I just heard the faint sound of waves through the line, the breeze passing over the phone like Grandma's sigh. Back then I wanted to stop them too. But they made me sign papers to co-sign the first cabin. I was scared. I had no power. But now, seeing you stand up, seeing you break free, I'm proud. And I hurt too. Why does it hurt, Grandma? Because if I had been stronger, maybe Nate wouldn't have had to leave. And maybe you wouldn't have grown up believing that love always means giving until there's nothing left. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my voice. Grandma, I don't even know what to think anymore. You don't need to think, Clarissa. Just live true. Not for anyone else. For you. I don't remember what I said after that. The call ended with her quiet words. Don't let them make you believe you're cruel. Because cruelty is using love to bind someone until they're empty. When I set the phone down, the room felt bigger. Not because of the furniture, but because for the first time I didn't feel alone in this story. Someone else had been through it. Someone had stayed silent. And someone, my grandma, was still watching, holding memories that had never been allowed to surface. And now, those memories had found their voice in me. I used to think the hardest part of cutting ties with my family was closing the door and watching loved ones walk away. But it turned out the real sting was public opinion. It started with a 3-page social media post from Harper. The headline, bold and heavy, "We don't choose family, but we always carry the pain." It came with a black and white ultrasound photo captioned, "Dear child, I'm sorry you'll grow up without the support of family." Below was a tearful narrative about a successful older sister abandoning her pregnant younger sister, forcing her to sell nearly all her assets, lose her job, crash with friends, and fall into depression. Harper didn't mention my name, but anyone who knew us knew exactly who she meant. The post went viral quickly. Comments flooded in without pause. A successful woman, yet this heartless? No matter how much you achieve, if you abandon your own blood, you're just an empty shell. That child will grow up in pain, abandoned by an entire family. I read each line, trying to stay calm, but my chest burned like something was clawing its way out. I once lived my entire life for my family, sold my car to pay for my mother's emergency, lived off instant noodles for a week to send money for house repairs. But no one knew. And no one cared to know. The truth always loses to a story that knows how to make people cry. What hurt even more was the change in how people looked at me at work. Walking down the hall, some stopped talking when I passed. One Tuesday morning, I found an unmarked envelope on my desk. Only one line was written on it. "Someone like you made manager?" Inside was a printed copy of Harper's Post. Someone had sent it to HR along with an anonymous complaint accusing me of abusing my position for improper investments and redirecting company funds for personal family use. I was thrown back to how I felt 10 years ago, back when I was an operations assistant, once investigated internally just because of a bookkeeping error that wasn't mine. I proved my innocence then. But the feeling of being suspected, treated like a criminal in the very place I gave my all to, never changes with time. HR requested a full statement from me. I prepared it in silence, attaching all legal documents regarding transfers, personal financial contributions, and clear proof that every single dollar involved came from my post-tax income, with no ties to company funds or operations. I included insurance statements, confirmation letters from the bank, and court records from the ongoing case involving the Denver property. The meeting with the board took place in a small conference room on the 12th floor. I walked in, feeling the weight of a few long stares from senior members. But I didn't lower my head. I looked them straight in the eyes and told the whole truth. No embellishments, no evasion, no pleading. I spoke about my mother. About the cabin in Idaho. About the car I had to sell. About a younger sister now using an unborn child to spin a false narrative. I didn't ask for sympathy. I just told the truth, complete, cold, and clear. One executive board member, Mr. Kessler, known for being tough and highly experienced, gave a small nod as I finished. "Clarissa," he said, his voice low and steady, "if what you've said is true and we have no evidence to the contrary, then not only have you done nothing wrong, you're someone worthy of admiration." I said nothing. I wasn't looking for praise. I only wanted to be believed. 2 days later, I was called to the CEO's office. I expected a polite thank you or at least confirmation that I could keep my job. But Mr. Jerome, the current CEO, studied me for a long moment before speaking. "Clarissa, you've been through more than most of us here. And yet you stand tall. You protected assets, protected truth, and most importantly, protected yourself. That's what I want in a leader." I froze when I heard his next words. The board met in a closed session. "I'm retiring earlier than planned. And they've unanimously voted to promote you to Chief Executive Officer." My mouth opened, about to protest, but he raised a hand to stop me. "Don't decline. You've earned this. Not because of what you've been through, but because of how you faced it." That afternoon, I stepped out of the office as the sunlight bathed the long hallway that led to the terrace. I stood there for a few minutes, not thinking about Harper or my parents. I thought only of my grandmother, of Uncle Nate, and of myself. A woman who once believed giving was an obligation, now learning how to preserve her own worth without apologizing. Below me, the city of Denver kept moving at its usual pace. But inside, something had shifted. I was no longer the shadow trailing behind my family. I was Clarissa Hawkins, a person, a leader, and a woman learning to live her own life. That evening, just as I wrapped up a meeting on our expansion strategy in the West, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and froze. A name I never expected to see again appeared. Caleb Rivers. I stared at it, heart racing. His message was short, simple, with no exclamation marks or attempts to impress. Yet it brought tears to my eyes in an instant. "I just got back to Colorado this afternoon. Kept this number, never thought I'd use it. But if you are truly yourself now, not living for anyone else, then I still have room beside me." I sank into my chair, phone still in hand, afraid it might vanish like a dream. His words weren't poetic, but they struck directly at the parts of me I had buried. Caleb and I met when I was 26. He was a medical resident newly assigned to a community clinic, and I had just been promoted to operations supervisor. We met at a charity blood drive my company co-hosted. He smiled at me through the noise and antiseptic air and said in a voice that was strangely calming, "You're the first person to make this morning less dull." The 3 months that followed were the warmest in my adult memory. We had quick breakfasts at the Washington Street Cafe, shared waffles, talked about everything and nothing. He was the first to ever ask, "Clarissa, if you didn't have to worry about family, what would you do for yourself?" I couldn't answer. When he proposed, I didn't cry from joy. I cried out of fear. I knew I couldn't keep him and still remain tethered to the endless duties to my parents and Harper. I turned him down. He didn't blame me. He just held me for a long time and said, "I just hope one day you live without asking anyone's permission." Then he left. Cut off all contact, disappeared. I heard he went to Africa with a global health organization. I convinced myself he deserved someone without such heavy baggage. But now, after everything, he reappeared. And just like he once hoped, I was finally living for no one but myself. I didn't reply right away. I needed to breathe. Let the emotions rise naturally without rush. I stepped out onto the balcony. Early fall in Denver was gentle. Golden light bathed the trees, turning amber. I tilted my head up and closed my eyes. It had been so long since I allowed myself to feel something that wasn't tied to burden or calculation or consequence. Just memory. And longing. That night, as the house dimmed and I poured myself a cup of hot tea, I placed my phone on the table and finally replied. "I still had your number, though I never dared use it. I still remember that mocha at the little cafe. If you still like that place, maybe we could meet again." Less than a minute later, he responded. "Tomorrow morning. 8 o'clock. Just like before." The next morning, I spent a little more time in front of the mirror, not to fix or hide anything but simply to see myself. This face had weathered exhaustion, hurt, and endurance. And it still stood steady and unbroken. I entered the cafe as the clock struck 8. The smell of fresh pastries was unchanged. The hum of the coffee grinder still filled the corner. And there he was, Caleb, sitting at the last table by the window wearing a navy turtleneck, his gaze soft enough to make me forget to breathe. As I walked toward him, he stood and smiled. "Clarissa." Just one word, but in it held all the years that needed no explanation. I sat down, wrapping my hands around the coffee cup in front of me. Caleb stayed still, didn't ask anything, didn't push me to explain. We sat there for a long while, as if presence alone was enough. Eventually, I looked up and met his gaze. "I'm no longer the person you once knew. But I'm still me. And this time I'm living for myself." Caleb nodded, his eyes glimmering with something soft and deep. "Then I'm glad that you've finally come home." The early autumn breeze in Denver brushed against my skin, gentle and fresh, like the city itself was whispering to me in an unspoken language. I strolled slowly along the cobblestone path of Washington Park, a light scarf draped around my neck, hands tucked into the pockets of my coat, quietly inhaling the peace of the morning. It had been so long since I could walk without rushing, without checking the time, without thinking about bills, wire transfers, or those urgent messages from people who believed they had the right to depend on me. Every step I took felt like a part of me returning. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. An unknown number, Oregon area code. I nearly let it ring out, but something in my gut made me pause. My finger slid over to accept the call. "Hello," I said, voice low and guarded. On the other end, just the sound of a breath at first. Then a familiar voice, small and shaky. "Clarissa, it's me, Harper." I closed my eyes for a moment. That sound, even after all this time, carried a tone only I could truly recognize. Helplessness, pleading, and something almost like shame. I'm sorry. I have no right to call. But I have no one left. The cabin's gone, I got scammed. That guy took all my money and left. I'm at a community shelter in Eugene now, sleeping on a bunk bed, asking for meals. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I was wrong." I tilted my head upward, looking at the pale gray sky above, trees turning gold. Leaves about to fall, but in no hurry. They drifted gently without regret. As if once you've accepted what needs to be let go, you simply let go. "Harper," I said, my voice steady and calm, "I hope you're okay. Truly. No one deserves to live like that. But I can't go back. I can't start over with people who never change." Silence on the other end. Then a soft sob, not loud but enough to tug faintly at my heart. "You've always been the only one I thought of when everything collapsed," Harper whispered through tears. "You were the last safe place I remembered." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "You called me your safe place, but I was also the one you used the most. Do you remember when you sent that photo of Mom falling, said she needed emergency care? I sold off all my quarterly bonus shares to cover it within 2 days. Then I found out Mom was still playing tennis at the women's center. Harper didn't respond. Harper, I don't hate you, I said gently. But I need freedom. And I paid with my entire youth to earn it. I can't give up any more of myself. Then I ended the call. Didn't wait. Didn't let myself be pulled back into what I had already left behind. I stood still for a few seconds. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking, my mind was clear. Somewhere inside me there might still be a scar, but it had healed over. And I knew I wouldn't tear it open again. I kept walking. The sun had begun to peek through the tall trees. In the distance, near the grassy slope beside the small lake, I saw someone standing with his back to me. Long gray coat holding 2 cups of coffee, tall and calm. It was Caleb. I picked up my pace, each step like I was moving through my own shadows toward the light I once gave up. When I got close, Caleb turned around and smiled softly. He held up 1 cup. Mocha, no sugar, extra foam, still your usual? I nodded. Still me, but not the same woman. He studied me for a moment, then said quietly, then you're the best version I ever hoped to meet again. I laughed. Not a laugh to cover pain or awkwardness, but one that was whole and warm, as if I had finally stepped out of an old dream and touched reality with my full heart. I took the cup, my fingers brushing his. Caleb, I said, do you know something? I used to think family was where you were born. But it turns out real family is where no one uses you. Where you don't have to be on guard. Where just being yourself is enough to be loved. Caleb said nothing, just gently held my hand. We continued walking down the path strewn with golden leaves, 2 steaming cups of coffee in our hands on a clear morning. I looked up, watching the sky open above us, my heart strangely light. After all these years, I had finally learned to stop needing anyone to validate my worth. I didn't need to call anyone family, because I had redefined that word for myself, by what I chose to keep and what I was strong enough to let go of. I don't know what each of us might choose if placed in my shoes. Some might forgive. Some might stay silent. Others might walk away. But I believe that, at some point in life, we all have to ask ourselves, am I truly living for me? Or am I just holding on to the role others expect me to play? What do you think about this story? If you were in my place, would you go back? Or move on? I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments below. Because maybe your story might help someone out there find their own voice. And if you're drawn to real-life stories about family, love, and the choices between care and boundaries, don't forget to follow this channel so you won't miss the next journeys ahead. Life is full of unexpected turns. But how we walk through them, that's what defines who we are.